And we're live. Welcome to Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and thank you so much for joining us for our unique podcast community, where we explore the triumphs and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished artists. Thank you so much for helping our channel grow. We hit 1,750 subscribers yesterday, thanks to you. Please share and like our videos. That helps our community grow. And check it to see our 242 past episodes. Check out our website at www.jasontram.net. You can also see us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and follow us on those platforms. We really appreciate it. We have a great guest today. We have a comedian who's really funny, and she's also an actress and has done a lot of things in the performing arts world. We have Vickie Plummer joining us today. Welcome, Vickie.
Thank you. I'm a distinguished guest, apparently. That's the first time I've ever been described that way.
Well, I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you.
While we've had lots of musicians on the show from a lot of different genres, I really love stand-up comedy. I'm a big fan of it, and I just love to learn listen to different ways people come up with material and refine material, and I got to meet you on Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling podcast with Mark Riccadonna, and that was a real blast, and I'm so glad you can join us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. When we were on that podcast, that was so fun. I loved the conversation that we had. I love that we got to talk about music and we got to talk about the performing arts in general and how important that is, because that is a passion of mine. Not to get sidetracked super early, but my background is in drama and theater and all that, and I started when I was a very little kid.
You beat me to the punch. I love it. I always start saying, tell me about your musical journey or your artistic journey. And people ask me all the time when I'm on podcasts that are not music related, they'll ask me, how does one become a conductor? It's the same thing. How does one become a comic? So let's dig into that journey.
I'm going to try to make this a little short, but when I was a little kid, I was a huge fan of Carol Burnett show. And we watched that as a family, and I think I was maybe 5 or 6 when I got the message that laughter, if you can make people laugh, that makes people come together, and it makes you really happy. Because I would see my family, sometimes my dad would have a bad day, or people would be arguing, or things in the household, everyone was doing their own thing, and some people were busy doing other stuff. But if we came together and we got in front of the TV and we watched that show, we would get together as a family and laugh together. And everyone had that shared experience. And that little message popped in my head where I was like, oh, this is I want to do this. I want to bring people together and do that. And it wasn't formulated that well, but I got that message. And so that is the very first thing that I remember as a young kid. And I remember
storytelling and laughter, right? A life in storytelling and laughter. I love it.
Yes. And so she is my idol. I did my senior thesis on her in college. I adore Carol Burnett. I have yet to meet her. If I ever meet her, I probably will die. She's just, I think, so funny and just so kind and awesome and wonderful. But
great vocal artist too. She's a great singer. She was just great, just a tremendous entertainer.
Wonderful. And she grew up, her parents didn't raise her. Her grandmother raised her in Hollywood in a one-room apartment. They were so poor. Her grandmother loved movies though, and would take her to the movies every Saturday. And they would go into the bathroom and she'd make her steal all the toilet paper from all the stalls.
Wow, what a story. I didn't know that. That's incredible.
Yeah. And she would act out all the characters from those movies. And that's why when you watch the Carol Burnett show, you see Gone with the Wind, which was Went with the Wind, and Sunset Boulevard, and all of those things where she's becoming those characters. That's what she did as a kid. She would go home and play all those characters. And now here she is, an adult with her own TV show, and she's just doing what she did as a kid. And wow. I loved her. I still love her. I think she's amazing. But she moved to Broadway. She moved to New York with the intent of being on Broadway. She wanted to be in a George Abbott directed musical. That was her goal, which she did. And her first Broadway musical was Once Upon a Mattress, and she played Princess Winifred. And my senior year of college,
I was shy.
Yeah, I've always been shy.
What a fun song.
I was cast as Winifred my senior year of college, and I was like, oh my God, it's a sign, I
That's
was so proud.
fantastic.
I was so
I
excited.
haven't done a lot of musical theater, but I was hired to conduct. I was once upon an actress with the Annapolis Chamber Orchestra down, and I just had the best time in the world conducting that with those musicians and those singers, and
It's
the
a
music is
fun
so fun.
show. It is a fun show. It's so good. It is really, really good. And Richard Rodgers' daughter is the writer of that, the music of that show,
Wow.
if I remember right. I'm gonna have to look that up to make sure I'm correct. But
Now
it's a
you've
long
always
time ago.
straddled the two worlds between theater and comedy.
Correct. Yeah. So when I was a kid, Steve Martin was my favorite stand-up comic. I thought he was so funny. Two wild and crazy guys, and King Tut, and all of that. And he always had his banjo and the white suit and the arrow through his head. And I was like, I want to do that. And at 10, I told my parents I'm going to be a stand-up comic. I'm sure they were like, yeah, okay, not a good idea. And all through school, we didn't have a theater department. I'm from a small town in New Hampshire. There was no drama department. We just had one teacher in elementary school, Mrs. Erickson, who did shows. And she had a summer theater program that my parents enrolled my sister and I in. We did that every summer from the time I was 5. And then Mr. Lord, who was an English teacher, he did shows most of the time, not musicals. They were straight plays. I remember doing the Children's Hour, which was a pretty serious drama. I was Rosalie Wells. And my sister was also in that show too. And um, and then we had another guy in town. His name was Bob Brokaw, and so he would sometimes come and direct musicals. And I was in the chorus, and my sister was in the band, and that's where we got the arts. We had that.
I
And
love that. You can find that no matter where you are, the arts can bring you in. I love that when you come to New York and you meet everybody, they're from everywhere, like
yeah,
small towns, big cities. I just love that when I work with artists and they find their pathway there.
but I wanted stand up. I was like, how do you do that? Where do you go to? Is there a stand up school? Like, what do you do? And I remember my senior year of high school, like how I guess I'll go to college for theater. So that's what I did. I went to my local college, University of New Hampshire, and I actually won a scholarship from the Mask and Dagger Society that I auditioned for. And I'll never forget my homeroom teacher. She read about it to our class. She said, "Hey, there's this thing, blah blah blah." And I went up to her after and I said, "Can you give me that? Because I'm interested in that." She goes, "Yeah, I'll give it to you. You're not going to win it." And I was like, "I'm not going to." Oh, wow, thanks for the support. And
Great motivator.
when I won it, I didn't want to like rub it in her face, but I was so happy that I won. I just wanted to be like, "You told me I was never going to win this." I didn't do that though, but I in my head was just like, "I can't wait to get out of this town." I was like, "Oh, there was no support for that kind of stuff. Everybody was they knew you from the time you were born. They're very nice people, but it just wasn't. I don't know. They wanted you to go to school for like something important. You know what I mean? But when you do well, everyone is in there. They're all excited.
For
But at the
sure.
time, if you're not doing something already successful, they're like, mm. But isn't that about that for everything in life? People are like, that's a bad
Creatives are always
idea.
on a unique path. I always find as a creative, we're always making our own path. There's no, obviously, there's it's so many ways to become to become a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor. You have to go through this prescribed way. To become an artist, it's such a circuitous path, and everyone's
Right.
got their own unique spin on it. And like your theater and comedy, and you still do both. Right? You're still doing both all the time, right?
Yeah, so I went to college and loved it. Absolutely loved it. I was like, oh my God, I'm finally around people that are super creative all the time. Like I thought I was just what would be the word? Like an outcast because I was always loud. I was too loud. You clap too hard. How can you clap too hard?
You
Like
were shy.
yeah, like you sing too loud. I was too everything in my town, in my house. Everything was too much. But then when I went to college, I was around all the too much kids, and I was so excited. I was like, oh, we're all this way. This is amazing. And so I fit right in and it was really fun and I loved it. And I toured my junior and senior year with a theater company called Little Red Wagon, and we went around New England and we did shows for kids, and it was interactive. We had puppets and we did storytelling right out of the back of the truck. It had like curtains right on there, and we went to libraries and rec departments and all that stuff, and I loved that. It was so much fun.
What a
And
great
then
program, bringing music to the people, that bring arts to the people like that,
yeah,
kind of in the community and very vibrant. That's great. I love it.
it was amazing. And I want to say they're still going. They're still going. And at the time, I think I was in their 17th or 18th year that they were going, because I remember going back to celebrate their 20th year. And so it was so much fun. And getting that job was like a really big deal because as a student, we all auditioned for it. I think I auditioned 3 times before I got cast, and I was like, "Oh, I'm never gonna get this." And I was so excited when I did. We had 2 trucks, 2 troops of 3, and we lived on campus. And those were the best summers. They were so much fun. And you had little kids and families from all around New England, and they would look forward to the big red truck coming into town. And oh my God, so much fun. We had the best time. I absolutely loved that. And then when I graduated from college, I was kind of like, now what? Now what do I do? Like, where do I go? What do I do? So I thought if I move near New York and get a nanny job, then I can audition. And not the best idea in hindsight because you're busy all day with the kids when you should be auditioning, you know? But I did actually take voice lessons and some acting lessons in that area, and I did some local productions down there. But after 6 months with 5 kids, 2 were newborn
Oof.
twins, I was like, I this is a bad idea.
You'd be exhausted
So
by the time you go to the auditions at night.
yeah, so I left, and then I drove to Kentucky for combined auditions at the SETCs, which are the Southeastern Theater Conference auditions, with
Hmm.
a bunch of my friends. And we went in the middle of a huge storm. And I remember we kept having to pull over and clear off the car. And we auditioned. And I want to say they have like hundreds of companies there. And you sing and you do a monologue, and you're in front of like all these companies at once, and then they can all choose to call you back. And so then you have a number, and then you can go, find out who called you back and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think I got that many callbacks. I got like a few, and some of the companies that I remember going to, you go into their hotel room where they have, all these other people they've called back, and they do like mini like audition type things there, and they tell you about their company and blah blah blah. But I saw this company there called Missoula Children's Theater, and I was like, I want to work for them. I'm going to work for them. They didn't call me back, but I was like, I'm going to work for them. And I looked them up and
Putting
I
it
said,
out there in the world. I like that.
yeah. And I said, oh, they're going to be at the New England Theater Conference in 2 weeks. So I sent them a letter with a mini headshot of me and my resume. And I said, I'm going to be at the NETCs on whatever day it was. I said, I was just at the SETCs. You didn't call me back, but I would love to meet you. And I'm auditioning at this day and this time. And so when I went to the NETCs, I did get a call back from them and got an interview. And then I did get hired by them. And I worked for them for 3 years, and it changed my life. And I loved it. It was the best experience ever. I still have best friends from that job. It was life changing. And then I moved to New York after those 3 years.
So what lessons did you take away before you came to New York? What did you take away from that time and the first big break?
So that job is all about kids and changing lives. And it's done through theater and the arts. And so it's not really about me as a performer, it's about me being the person that brings change into a community through the arts.
That is
And
beautiful, and we all need it. So needed in our world where there's so much, so many challenges, and bringing the arts to help people is one of the most noble things we can do.
yeah, and it's, I mean, it was like destiny, because I was like, this is what I needed as a kid, and this is what communities need all over the place, because it brings the community together for a week. So we had a truck, and in that truck we brought the sets, the lights, the costumes, the makeup, the scripts. And then I was with another tour actor director. They call you the TADs, the tour actor directors. And we were in intense training for 2 weeks where you learn everything about that show that you're going to bring to the town. And so you learn everybody's lines in the show backwards and forwards. You learn all the blocking. You learn all the music, every vocal part, everything there is to know about that show, you learn. And then on top of that, you learn how to speak to the teachers, how to speak to the kids, the best way not to say things, and how to avoid getting into political talks with people, because you're going to be across the United States. You're going to be in different environments. And we sometimes stayed in people's homes. Sometimes we were in hotels. You never knew week to week where you were going to be. And I grew up so much in those 3 years and became a totally, well-shaped person out of living in just my little town in New Hampshire, and living in Connecticut for part of the time, and then living in, UNH for part of the time. Suddenly I was now traveling, and I went to, oh gosh, at that time, I think it was 38 of the states. I've now been to 49 of the 50. I just need to go to
Wow.
Alaska. But
Alaska's gorgeous. I went there on a cruise and I just love Alaska. But you have to get up there and do some great stand up. They can
I would
use it, I'm
love
sure.
to. I would love to. But it was amazing. Like, we would go into a town, you had Mondays were auditions, and we'd audition all the kids that came in, and we had parts for 50 to 75 of the kids. We started rehearsals that night, and it was all divided up, like, so you wouldn't audition, everybody and then everyone would start rehearsing that night. We divided up like who would rehearse that night. Then they all had a schedule of who was rehearsing when. And then by Saturday, you were doing the dress rehearsal, the matinee, then you had a break for dinner, and then you did the evening performance, and then put everything packed up and put it in your truck, and you drove on to the next town. And it was
Quintessential bus
amazing.
and truck. But I love the fact that you're casting local kids and getting them into production. And I've done a lot of touring myself, and it's amazing, like the challenges that you face day to day. There's always something different. It's never the same. The theater changes, the space changes, the people change. That's got to be really a lot of challenges.
It was a lot of challenges, and some weeks were amazing in the respect that you'd come into the town and it would be like this beautiful theater that you were going to be in, and the person was super organized, that was your contact person, and they would have everything ready to go, and I'd be like, oh my god, this is going to be a cakewalk this week, this is amazing. And then other weeks it would be the opposite, and you're like, oh, our double wide trailers where we're performing, okay, and you'd have to figure out how to make things fit in there, and your backstage was actually outside, and but those were always the weeks that I loved more than like the perfect theater, because you were like, okay, well, this is the town that needs us.
That's the professional's job, right? I was told when I first started my career, I was working with a not so great chorus at the time. I don't remember the exact one, but I was working with a conductor at the Metropolitan Opera, Joe Culinary, and Joe Culinary is like, it's your job as the professional to make them the best that they can be. It doesn't matter what the ensemble is. And I'm like, that's a great
Exactly.
point. Whether I'm doing an all county for little kids, for elementary to high school kids, or whether I'm doing an opera, it doesn't really matter. That's our job as professionals to bring the best out of what we can.
That is exactly right. And we always said to the kids, like, this is a team effort. Like, we can't do this without every single one of you. You have to be here. If one of you's not here, we can't do it. We've got to help each other out. And I can't even tell you, like, some of the things that I absolutely loved were a principal would come in and point out all the bad kids before the auditions and say, if that kid gives you a hard time, you let me know. And I'd be like, don't tell us anything. We don't know any of these kids at all. We just want them to come in and audition. We're just going to do, what we normally do. 9 times out of 10, we would pick the troublemaker that they hadn't pointed out to us yet as the lead. And that you would see
Those are your
principal,
creatives, a lot of cases, right?
oh, they would be like flipping out. I can't believe you picked him as the lead. I'm telling you though, by the end of the week, that kid would become a leader in that group and be
I
like
bet you'll find
helping the little
a
ones.
bunch of Vickie Plummers and Jason Trams hanging out in that cast.
You know it. And they would be like having the best time. And by the end of the week, and they were the best kids. I'm gonna cry thinking about it. Like the principals would just be like, I can't believe this. And I'm like, you just needed to give them a chance. And it was just the best. I loved that when that would happen. But I'm so passionate about this stuff. I'm such a dork, but
I think nothing's more transformative. We can, the arts give us a mirror on society. They let us really do good work, and those are the times when we have a lot of times in my business I have to deal with a lot of administrivia, I call it. But
yes,
but then there's those moments where we get to really make impact on people's lives.
We would get letters from like some of the parents and stuff, and they would tell us like a couple weeks later about their child experiencing that week and what they went through, and I would cry like I am now every time, because it was just like so moving to me, because we were just there for a week doing a play. That's the surface though. That
is the surface,
not really what's happening, and it would just be amazing what you would see happen. And just
we were comparing touring war stories on the last we met on the podcast on Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling with Marco Gadana, and I told the story of I was conducting in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and the set fell down in the pit, and I'll never forget that as long as I live. My horn player caught it, and no one got hurt, but it was like, oh, that's not annoying. We got 1,000 people in the audience, and the set just fell down. I'm like, that's a new one to put in my chapter in my book. So you had a great story about the touring life. And you had a story you brought up.
Yes. So
share that with us. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Always in retrospect.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm such a sap. I get really passionate about like kids and theater, and I swear it goes back to from when I was a little kid, always being told like, you're too loud, you're too this, you're too that. And that used to drive me bonkers, because I was always like, why? Why do you have to be a certain way? You know what I mean? Anyway. So we were on tour. We were in Wyoming, and we were doing Alice in Wonderland. That was the show. And I was the Queen of Hearts, and we had all these kids who were in a line, and they were the cards, all the heart cards. And so I was singing this song called Off With Their Heads, and the cards at one point were supposed to shuffle. They did this little shuffle dance. So I'm singing this part, and I forgot to tell you, we're in a rodeo hall. So we're in this gigantic rodeo hall with our tiny little set sitting on
as one is,
right? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So just imagine like this giant space with this tiny little set in the middle, and all of a sudden the cards start moving, and I'm like, in my head, like, why are they shuffling? It's not time for them to shuffle yet. It's not part of the dance. Why are they moving? And then I realized that card number 5 is throwing up all over the floor. And I'm like, oh God, what are we going to do? So I finished the verse, and this mom comes running and grabs the kid, goes running off. And there's this big puddle of vomit on the floor, and we're in front of the audience. And I'm like, okay, we're going to take a little break. And so blackout. We don't have an intermission in the show, but we did that day. So this lady comes out, mops it all up, and I'm like, oh God. So we get everything done. We start the show back up without card number 5. And so then later that night, after the second show, we were packing everything up, and this dad came over with this big 10-gallon cowboy hat, and he's like, Vickie, I gotta tell you something. I have lived in KC, Wyoming my whole life, and I had thought I'd seen it all. But a child throwing up in the middle of the show, that just beats all. And I just was like, you are correct, sir. So, but he told me about their Christmas pageant that they had that year, and he said, we did it here at the rodeo hall, and we had the angel of the Lord. She was all up there in the rafters. She was going to come down. She forgot what the Lord had said, and in the middle of the show, she said, what the hell did God say? But this here, the child throwing up, that beats that. I was like, okay.
Put
I'll
that in your
never forget
memoirs.
that. Never forget that. That is my favorite ever parent story ever. So
Now,
that's
when did you do your first stand-up set?
so that was when I moved to New York in '99. Um, that the whole reason why I moved to New York was to do stand-up comedy because I was like, okay, so I've you know done a bunch of shows. I've toured across the country and worked with kids because everything I ever did, every professional theater job I ever did involved kids in theater. And I was like, okay, I get the message. You want me to do stuff with kids in theater, but I want to do stand-up comedy. How do I do that? And so, some of my friends that I was touring with, I had said I've always wanted to live in New York, and I see myself living in New York. When I visited there, I felt like I had lived here before. I got off the train and I felt so comfortable, and I just literally felt like I'd been there before. I've never had that feeling in my life, but I just felt like I'd walked the streets before, and I don't know if it's from seeing New York in movies or I just felt like I'd lived here before. It just felt so familiar, and I was like, no, I've been here in a life before or something. And I don't even know if I believe in that, but I was like, I know I'm supposed to be here. So anyway, we moved to New York. Some of my friends that I toured with, and I got a job in Times Square at Chevy's. It hadn't even opened yet. I walked in, I got hired on the spot, and so I was a waitress and a bartender. And I don't remember who showed me backstage the paper that you could actually buy it right off of the little magazine guy right outside of the Chevys. And I was like, oh my God, you don't have to have like a subscription. You can just buy it. Oh my God. And there was an ad in there for a stand-up comedy class. And I went, what? Oh, I'm taking this. And it was like the first one that I saw. I didn't even know if this was a good class. I just was like, I'm taking that class. And so I signed up for the class, and on my way to the club, I got lost because I have a horrible sense of direction. I since have learned that Fifth Avenue divides, east and west
It
in New
certainly
York.
does.
But I ended up on the wrong side of town at a strip club. I was like, this is not the New York Comedy Club.
But there's great
And
material in there, I'm sure.
oh yeah, my first joke that I wrote in my class came from getting lost. And so we did that in my class showcase. And I was like, I don't know where I am. And I ended up at the class and I walked in and the guy said to the whole class, and that's what we're going to be doing during this whole semester. And I was like, and I missed everything. I was like, oh my God. But no, it was really, really fun. I loved it. And so the first show I did was that comedy class showcase. And that was in the spring of 2000. So
It's exciting, and when you find it, I know for me, like I was a professional, I was a singer before I became a conductor, and well, I was a good singer, but I wasn't the best singer. When I went into conducting, I just knew it worked. It fit like a glove. It just kind of just changed my life. What was it like when you felt the crowd and you did your first set, and did you have that kind of feeling?
oh God, yeah. Yeah, like even in the class when the way I loved my class because the first thing the guy said to us was, we're not trying to be funny. I want you to just stand up there and talk to me for a couple minutes and tell me your name, tell me what your day was like, and don't try to tell me jokes, don't try to make me laugh, just tell me about your day. And I loved that approach. I was like, good, because comedy is just telling the truth. You're literally just connecting with somebody else, with the whole audience. You're having a conversation. That's it. That's all you're doing. You're not trying to make anybody laugh. And so I loved that approach. And so the very first show that I did, I'll never ever forget that goosebumps, back of the neck hair going back up, and that first laugh that you get is like the best high ever. Like it's better than when you've had too many drinks. It's better than anything you've ever felt. It's like a rush. And that's that high that everyone's chasing after all the time. It's an amazing feeling. And so when I had that first show, I was just like, oh my God, I have to do this again,
How do you establish
amazing.
yourself once you've done that? You get yourself. How do you start getting? I know you were very busy getting jobs that period, and you were doing comedy all over. How do you start that process?
It's literally just connecting with other people, other comics, and because there are so many people that are pursuing stand-up comedy and music, and as you know, it's like so many people. So it's just doing your thing, being nice to people, connecting with people. I guess they all call it networking now. You know, it's got a fancy term. But I'm just being myself and always being nice and kind and not being a jerk. You know what I mean? No one wants to work with jerky people in any job. You know
That
what I
is a
mean?
universal. I tell my students, if I write a book, it's going to be chapter one is be nice, be a good
Yeah.
colleague.
You want to be nice. You don't want to work with jerks. You don't want to work with somebody who is, you know, not doing the work, right? And you want to work with people that are always friendly and fun and prepared, and in any job out there, that's what you want. So I just always tried to make sure that I was prepared, that I knew what was going on. Like if they said you're going to come in and do 5 minutes, I made sure I had 5 minutes. If they wanted me to go out and flyer for them, I did that, you know, because I had just started. You know, hey, can you go bark on the street and then we'll give you 5 minutes? Okay, sure, I will do that. You know what I mean?
I tell my son's inspiring jazz rock fusion drummer, and I'm like, you got to be there. You got to be out there. You have to say yes to everything that comes your way, and then show up prepared and do your job. And you know, it's very important to establish that. And I think that's for any young people listening. That is such an important set of skills: is how to network, how to be a good colleague, and show up prepared.
Yep. Yeah. I always tried to make sure that I knew what was going on, that I was prepared, that I was always writing stuff, that I always took some classes because that was there are some people that are purists that say like, oh, you don't need a class. You don't necessarily need a class, but classes are good in the respect that it kind of keeps you on track. And a lot of times you're learning new things, not necessarily like humor. No one can be really taught how to be funny, but it's always a nice thing to meet other people. It's always a nice thing to like learn a different way of doing something. I'm never opposed to learning. Learning's a great thing. And it's always a nice way to like see what other people are doing. You know, I always love to be like, oh, someone else is still talking about masturbation. Someone else is still talking about smoking weed. No, you know, and you sit there and you go, oh, these are the topics that are trending. I don't want to talk about that. You know what I mean? And so you learn a lot of new things when you're doing that kind of thing because it's helpful to say, like, I want to talk about things that relate to the audiences, but you also want to stand out. So you don't want to, she's so cute. Hello. You want to stand out in a way that makes people remember who you are in a unique and fun way. You don't want to stand out in a way of, oh, that's the guy that did that, you know?
Good point. Good point. So, you know, you get on the road. You're doing lots of shows and sets, smaller and larger. Who are some of the comedians who inspired you? Some of the people you might have seen live in the New York scene, and who may have inspired you to be better.
Oh my gosh. So I always go back to like who I absolutely loved as a kid. And so when I was a kid, it was Robin Williams and it
Oh
was
man, he was good.
Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy. And like those are like the classics that I absolutely adored. But now that I'm back in stand up, oh gosh, there are so many. I worked at West Side Comedy Club for I just stopped working there about 3 weeks ago, but I worked there from July up until December. And so I was so lucky that I got to see comics literally every night. And this is where I fail. When you put me on the spot, I suddenly can't remember any names at all. And I'm going to have to get my phone out and look up names. But there are like so many people that I absolutely adore. And I'm just like, oh my God, that person's so funny. Like Harrison Greenbaum, I think, is one of the funniest people. I just love the way he delivers stuff. I just think he's one of the funniest people. He's been on America's Got Talent. I think he's great.
How do you find your voice? Like, how long did it take you to find
Oh, a
what
long
makes?
time.
Yeah, that's like in any field. It takes a long time to find what makes you unique and then kind of hone that core of your rep down and your set to
Oh,
like a
really long
knife
time.
edge.
You know who I absolutely, one more I'll tell you that I love, and I got to open for him this summer, and he's been so nice to me. Gary Goldman.
Oh yeah.
I adore him. I've loved him for years. I think he's so funny because he talks about everything from Oreo cookies to how the states decided on just their two letters to come up with their two letters that are on the, I'm sorry, I'm like totally losing my mind. The two letters that are on when you write a envelope out federally, they only have to have two letters. So if it's like New Hampshire, it's NH. If it's
Right.
Massachusetts, it's MA. And so he did a whole bit about how they had a committee that came up with those two letters. And it's one of the funniest things that you've ever seen in your entire life. And it's just brilliant. And I adore it. It's one of the funniest things. And you would, how do you come up with that?
Such a random topic. You know, like I love the comedians who like kind of put that mirror on how ridiculous our society can be. It's
oh yeah,
the fun in life.
Like he's just so funny. But then he also has dealt with like crushing depression, like crushing to the point where he had to like check himself into the hospital and has gotten like treatment for that. And he had this amazing special called The Great Depression that was on HBO a year and a half ago, I believe. And it's amazing. And he seriously like goes into great detail about how he has suffered depression since he was a child. And Judd Apatow directed that. And I love that kind of thing because he's telling the truth and showing you who he is as a person, where his humor comes from. He also talks about how his outside person doesn't match his inside. Like he's this sensitive guy that is into, like, you know, he has a blankie. He carries around a blankie that he's had since he was a kid.
Sometimes the performers carry that shield around, you know, that they that's the public persona, but underneath it's like the Pagliacci, you know, the Pagliacci, the sad clown. That's such a great, you know, it's a great enduring tale, right?
Yeah, and he talks about that, and then but everyone looked at him as like he should play football, he should play basketball. He got a sports scholarship to college, and he's like, I don't want to do this. Like, and he would go home and cry after practice, but he had to because he needed the scholarship to go to school. And I found that to be just like amazing. And now he's been celebrating, I think this is his 28th year in comedy, and he played Carnegie Hall in November. Like, amazing. But one of the nicest people in the world. So I didn't even know I was going to open for him this summer. I knew I was doing a show there that night because I was, you know, on the bill for the next show, not that show. And they came over to me and they were like, you want to go on this show? I was like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. They're like, you're on in 1 minute. And I was like, oh, okay, you know. So not knowing that he was on right after me. So I went up, sold out crowd, got up there, did my 5 minutes. They were like, you got 5 minutes. I was like, okay. So I went up, did my 5 minutes, crushed, couldn't believe it went so well. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And I got off the stage, and the lights, you know, it's so blindingly bright, you know, you can't really see when you first get off the stage. And I see this hand like in front of me, like to do like a fist bump. And I'm like, okay. And it's Gary Goldman. He goes, great job, so funny, as they're announcing. And next up, we've got your headliner, Gary Goldman. And I'm like, oh, what? Oh my God. So then he goes out and crushes and does this amazing 30-minute set. And at the end, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I wonder if he'll let me do a photo with him, you know. So I went over, and one of his friends was sitting with him, and I said, do you think Gary would do a photo with me? And he goes, of course he will. And he said, you did great, he'll want to talk to you. And I was like, okay. And so he started quoting one of my jokes to me, and he was like, you did so great. And I was like, oh my God. So then I would see him whenever he would come back, and he knew my name. He knew, I was like, I don't know if you remember me. He goes, I totally do. And he now, we follow each other on social media, and he'll, you know, like stuff that I post. And I'm still blown away. Like, he knew I was going to the Burbank Comedy Festival, and he said, have a great time, Vic. Have a great time. I'm so excited for you. I was like, oh my God. Like, I couldn't believe it. Just, it's amazing. And so then he calls me kid whenever he sees me. He's like, hey kid, it just blows me away because I'm like, this is somebody that I have admired for so long and seen on television and studied his performances and watched how he writes, and now he calls me kid, and I've gotten to work with him, and like it's unbelievable to me. Like this is like a dream come true. Yet he's a real person. You know what I mean? Like he's not just somebody that's on TV. He is a real person who works all the time and one of the kindest people I've ever met in my life.
We all
So
need those
kind.
inspirational figures who kind of give us the ladder up. That's wonderful to hear. And I've loved his comedy for a long time. I listen to all. I spend so much time in the car as a conductor that I spend. I get. I'm tired of the opera I'm working on. I'll just put on stand up because it's so different for me, and I like to laugh. And he's always one of those guys that I've always enjoyed, and that's exciting.
He's so unique. And I think that's the thing about where you said, to go back to answer your question about finding your voice. So I did stand up from 2000 to 2007. And, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I also, at the same time, I wasn't as good at, I didn't have as much confidence as I do now. I'm older now. I'm kind of at that point where I'm just kind of like, not to be, gosh, how do I put this without being crude? Not to be crude, but I'm just kind of like, I don't really
Be
give a
crude.
shit. If you don't like me, you don't like me. That's okay. Not everybody likes everybody. There's a different kind of taste out there for everyone. But I feel like there's if you're good and you work hard, there's room for everyone, you know? And if you don't like me, that's okay. And back then I was so sensitive about stuff and I wanted everyone to like me that I tried to, with my comedy, I wanted the whole room to laugh. You're never going to make the whole room laugh. You just have to find your people. You have to find your people that connect with you, that like your style. And so that's a message I didn't get when I was younger. I just wanted the whole room to laugh. Never ever is that going to happen. Ever. You're never ever going to make everyone laugh because humor is subjective. Message I didn't remember at that time. Um, and so that's something I had to toughen up. I had to get a thicker skin. Another reason why I left was it's so male centric. Um, and it was very hard being a female comic. And everything was just so, like, you had to be double the funny. You had to be constantly like working harder just to get noticed because they would pick like for a lineup, 8 guys and 1 woman, so it was like you had less of a chance of getting put on a show, you know what I mean? And it just became harder to get spots. And then I got a full-time job that had health benefits and had a 401k and a regular paycheck, and I was like, oh, this is something cool I've never had before. And so I started not doing as much. I wasn't doing 6 days a week. I went to 5, then it was 4, then it was 3, then it was only on weekends. And so I kind of got to the point that I was like, maybe I will take a little time away. And the last thing I did was it was down between me and one other comic to be the warm up comedian for the Emerald Live on Food Network. And I loved that. It was so much fun, and Emerald was super sweet. And the callback was to actually do the live show. And I had so much fun, and I'll never forget it because it was the day after Marie Osmond passed out on Dancing with the Stars. And
Remember
I
that story.
brought that up during, the time that I was entertaining the audience and stuff. And Emerald was so great. And at the end of the show, he brought me up and he's like, this is my new warm-up comic. Didn't you do a great job? This is Vickie, blah, blah, blah. And I could see the producer out of the corner of my eye running toward me. And I was like, I know she's going to say, like, Emerald doesn't take, And she did. She's like, Emerald doesn't make the decision. But I said, I know. Don't worry about it. I know there's another person, whatever. So I get a call the next day and she was like, so, we're going to go with the other comic. And I was like, okay, I understand. Can you give me some feedback as to why you went with the other comic? I'd love to get, some feedback to help me improve. And she didn't really have any feedback for me. And I was like, okay. And then his show got canceled 2 weeks later. And so I was like, well, it wasn't meant to be. So
Show business.
I was like, well, I'll take a couple of weeks off. I'll take a month off to recharge, and then I'll get back into it a little bit more. And it became 12 years. I took 12 years off. And
Wow, that's a huge amount of time. And now, in that time, I know I was reading your bio. You had some health challenges and life.
life happens. You know what I mean? Like I really didn't mean to take that much time away. I just thought I would recharge and write some new material and get used to my day job that I had always had, but Broadway.com had bought the company that I worked for. So it was like a big adjustment that we were now working for this big, huge company. So it was like new people I was working for, new ways of doing things. We were in a new part of the town, Midtown, and so it was all these different things I had to learn. And as corporate, you know what I mean? Like there's new ways of doing stuff. And then we were seeing a lot of Broadway shows at night. So nights that I normally would be out pursuing comedy, I was now having to go see Broadway shows. Doesn't sound awful, having to go see Broadway
Yeah,
shows. But
could be worse.
it was really awesome. It was really amazing. And it just got to the point where I was like, well, now I've been away a year, are they going to even remember me? Like, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, well, I'll take a little time away. And just a lot of things happened. My mom, she got sick, and I had to actually go live with her for a couple of months. She had a heart attack. So I went and lived with her for a couple of months, and I worked remotely up in New Hampshire for a little while. And then I got sick. I beat cancer, though, which is really good.
Wow.
So I'm an 8-year cancer survivor, which is awesome. And then, just a lot of things happened. My little niece, she was only 21. She passed away suddenly. And so that was really hard. And like every time you think like you're ready to do something, life kind of knocks you down like, nah, not yet. But the thing that's crazy is I kept finding little scraps of paper around my house with little jokes I'd written, and I hadn't remembered I'd written it. Or I found like a notebook that had written material and hidden away. And like, so when I moved to New Jersey, I was packing up my stuff, and I kept finding more and more of these little notebooks. And I was like, okay, clearly I have been suppressing that I want to get up and do this again. Because I kept saying out loud, I want to do this, but I'm too old. It's too late. I already did it. It's too late. You're not too old, and it's not too late. That is something that we do to ourselves based on like what society says. There's no rule. There's no rule. You can do anything you want whenever you want to. These
I
little
love it.
rules about too old, too late. Who says? Who
So, what
says?
was it like getting back in the arena again after all that time off and all those challenges? And thank you for sharing that. It's we all face these challenges, and did this give you material? Did it help you find new things to think about? I mean, finding the humor in challenging times, I find very important to myself.
It was hard but fun at the same time, and it was something that I had. It was almost like a physical feeling I had to push down because I wanted to get back up on stage so much. And at my job, like in conference room meetings and stuff, I was constantly making everybody laugh. And all of my coworkers were like, didn't you used to be a stand-up comedian? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we can tell. Can you go do a show? We'll come see it. And I was like, well, you can't just go do a show. I can't just like go on. Yes, you can. Come on, just do it. So they were encouraging me. And so I finally said, all right, let me do this. I should just do this. And so I said I should take a class to like help me out to center my thoughts, figure it out. And I said, I'm not going to do any of my old material, none of it. I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to start over because I'm a whole different person. I've had so many different things happen to me, and I've grown more. I've got to do something else. So I did that, and January of 2019 is when I got back up. And the second I got on that stage and that spotlight hit me, and I had the mic in my hand, and I got that first laugh, I was like, why did I wait so long? I was like, what was I thinking? Like, this is so crazy. Why did I not do this sooner?
There is always a season, you find it again, and it's great that you got to return to your passion again, and after all that time. And how was it building, getting more jobs and building up your career again? What's it been like?
So it was really weird because I'm doing so much better now than I was back then. And I swear it is, my attitude is so different. And I think when you've almost died, I think it changes you. You get to the point where you're just kind of like, everything is so small compared to that. Like, it just doesn't matter. You're just like, what are the answers? Yes, no. There are two answers. So what's the worst that can happen? Someone says no. Okay. And you just go on and you move on and you just go to the next thing. The world's not going to end. It's going to keep turning, Like,
What is some of the material you focused on and some of the topics that have formed your new sets?
well, it's really funny because sometimes I will sit down to write and I'll say, okay, I'm going to write about this topic. None of the material is about that topic. Something else completely different will come out. And it's really funny. Like the stuff that you like the best about the closet with the talking clothes.
If you look it up on YouTube, Vickie talks about yo-yo dieting, and the clothes are talking to each other, and that is really funny.
That came out of an exercise in a class that I took, and I just took it like way further than this exercise, and that came out of frustration of trying to find something to wear in my closet. And I literally pulled out this top that I was like, God, this has been hanging in my closet for so long and I never wear it. And why do I even have it? And then I was like, I imagined what that shirt was saying to me every time I took it out of the closet. And it was looking at me like, yeah, you should not be wearing me. Put me back in the closet, bitch. You're not gonna, And that's where that came from. Like, I literally was like, this shirt is mocking me every time I take it out of the closet.
I like your it's telling you to, and the ones that are like what have the elastic bands, like, come over here.
Yeah, because that's what's happening. They're like, get down on this end of the closet, honey. We're your friends. Because and those personalities that talk, the voices and everything. So I base them on real people. So that bitchy shirt, that's a girl I grew up with in school that would never talk to me. That I always was like, I don't like you because you never even acknowledge me. But we've known each other from kindergarten. But okay, that's her. And then the clothes on the other end with the elastic waistband that's like, come on down here, stop hanging out with those bitchy tops. Like, those are all of my like gay boyfriends from the theater department who would tell you, even when you look like crap, like, honey, you look amazing, you're awesome. Those are all of my boys that I've loved for like 20 years, that we hung out in everywhere in New York. When you got broken up with, honey, stop crying, he wasn't right for you. Those are my boyfriends. Okay, so that's that. And then I don't know if you've seen the updated version, because I don't know if I have it up there. There's a third one, which is the dresser. Have you seen that version?
No, not yet.
I will send it to you, but I have a
Please
third
do.
one, which is a dresser who smokes. She's like, just put on the sweatpants from Costco. Go get yourself a pint of Haagen-Dazs. Get in your Bobo-Pedic bed and just eat it. So she's the old lady in all of us where you've just given up and you just eat that pint of ice cream. Yeah. So
I'm on Noom right now, so I can relate.
Yeah. See,
Going to the gym right as soon as we finish this show. Now you inspired me.
I think everyone can relate because we all have days or weeks or months where you're just like, oh God, I just can't work out today. I can't. Or those days that you're like, ooh, I feel good. I'm putting on my skinny clothes. I can fit into my skinny clothes. The hell with you, fat clothes, And so you have those sides of your closets and you have those personalities in there, and sometimes you eat a pint of Haagen-Dazs. I'm not going to lie. You do it.
We've all been there.
I'm just voicing it out loud. That's all.
It's amazing, like, you're finding the truth in life, and not like putting on this fake persona, but actually being true is probably and then being secure in yourself now that you're a little older, a little wiser, you've been through more, you come back at it now with a fresh perspective.
Definitely, definitely. And you know, it's really funny. A lot of stuff from when I was a kid is coming out in my material, um, which is really funny. I have this whole bit about when we were kids. I have an older brother. He is 5.5 years older than me. And when he was 13, my parents thought it was a great idea to let him babysit us. I'm like, you're not going to let him go see Jaws in the movie theater, but you're going to leave him alone at the house where there's like all these appliances with two kids. Okay, great idea, mom and dad. So I have this whole bit about how whenever he would babysit us, his idea of babysitting was wrestling, and
Oh,
he would set up like a wrestling ring, and he'd make us put on sweatpants, and he was the announcer, and he would literally make us wrestle. And he taught us like the art of the noogie, and he taught us how to do like headlocks and like all this stuff. And it kills. Everyone is like, I love that story. And again, I think people relate because they either have an older brother or sister, or they are an older brother or sister, and they used to torture their younger brothers and sisters. Um, it's so much fun to write about that stuff, and then to add jokes about that. It's really fun. That always gets a big reaction when I talk about that kind of stuff. So yeah.
so what do you have coming up the future? And I know we talked about in the other podcast that you're part of you're putting together an amazing fundraiser for a very important topic. So let's start with that one.
Okay, so tomorrow, well, let's start why we're doing it. So I'm sure folks in the New York area have seen, but I'm not sure if everyone across the country has seen, there was a huge, terrible fire that happened in the Bronx on January 9th. And so over 60 people ended up going to the hospital. Some are still in the hospital. 17 people died, 8 of them were children. And
What a
so
terrible tragedy.
really bad. Like I think they said it's the worst fire in 30 years in New York. And so here in the New York area, it's on the news all the time, and it's just so sad. You are seeing like some of these people have lost like their whole family, and they now don't have a place to live either. And so you saw me cry earlier. I'm very empathetic about this kind of thing, and I was like, how do I help people? How do I do something that I can help people that's different than just giving money myself? That's only one little tiny thing, but how can I try to help them in a bigger way? And so I reached out to my friend Dante, who works for Giving Tuesday, and he's also a comedian. And I said, how can we do something? Can we maybe put on a show? What can we do? So we reached out to Al Martin, who owns the Broadway Comedy Club, and I said, would you be willing to let us use the club to put together a benefit? And he said, yes, 100%, yes. And I said, can you send me a few dates that you have available? We'll figure this out. He said, the sooner you do it while it's fresh in people's minds, the better. And I was like, okay, let me know. And so we're doing that tomorrow. So January 23rd at 7 p.m. It's at the Broadway Comedy Club, which is 318 West 53rd in Midtown Manhattan. Tickets are $25, and 100% of the ticket is going to the Bronx Fire Relief Fund, which is what the mayor's office created, which all that money, 100% of that money goes towards all the people that were affected by the fire.
What an amazing way to help people. Who are some of the comics on that performance?
So I'm psyched because I got some amazing people. So I'm thrilled. So our headliner is Tom Cotter, who is from America's Got Talent. He was the first comedian to almost win, and he came in second to a dog, and he loves to advertise that he came in second to a dog. Um, and he's one of the nicest, funniest, kindest people. I'm thrilled that he's going to do the show. I'm thrilled that he's available. And then we just added Sherry Diaz, and she is actually a Bronx born and raised comedian, and she did a show recently on HBO, her first TV special in October. So that's super exciting. Dante Plush, who is my producing partner, he's on the show. And we have Alex Starr, who is on the show, and he produces tons of shows in Washington, D.C. and New York City. Hilarious. He's super funny. We have Jessica Miranda on the show, and she has done Funny Women of a Certain Age. live shows in New York City and Atlantic City, and that is a really amazing special that Carol Montgomery created a few years ago, and they just did their third TV special on Showtime. So Jessica's done live shows for them, so she's really funny. Johnny Watson is on the show, and he is a headliner who has been on Saturday Night Live and Comedy Central. So that's really great.
What an
And
all-star
then,
lineup. It's great that
oh,
it's
it's really
amazing when people
lineup.
give back like this. That's really incredible.
It's really awesome lineup. And we have DJ Collins, who's also from the Bronx. And I believe that is everybody. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody, because then
Sure.
I'll feel terrible if I didn't say everybody, and they'll be like, you didn't say my name, and I'll be like, I'm an ass. Okay. Oh, and then we have this amazing comedian. Her name is Zarna Garg, and Zarna, she was on Kevin Hart's LOL network.
Wow.
She is an Indian comedian. She likes to call herself the Indian mom, the Desi mom. She is one of the funniest people. I adore her. She's so sweet. She won the Best Newcomer Ladies of Laughter Award this past year. She's so funny. She is just the sweetest, and she has a really inspiring story. You should have her on. You would love her.
Put us together. I'm always looking to tell
I
great
will.
stories.
She's really great. So it's a really awesome lineup. And then, if you want to know one of my TV credits, I was on Chris Angel Mind Freak, his first special, and I helped levitate a woman in Times Square. How cool is that?
I've never done anything like that. It's amazing.
So,
Chris Angel's pretty awesome.
so yeah, no, I'm really excited. We're really trying to raise a lot of money, and if people want to go, they can go to the Broadway.com, BroadwayComedyClub.com, and buy tickets that way. They can also just donate. If they can't come, they can just donate amount right through the BroadwayComedyClub.com website.
If you could email offline when we get offline, email me the flyer. I'll put that all over the Music Matters social media.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you. That's
Well,
great.
so important to to use the arts that you're given to help people, and I think that's a really special. That's really a special part of who you are, and it's great that all these comedians are giving of their time. But to come together with the concept to put this together takes a great mind too. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing the success of this night.
Thank you. I'm always trying to do stuff for other people like that, and I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if that is something from when I was a little kid, or I don't know, but I'm always doing that stuff. And it makes me feel good to try to help people with the resources that I have. Because I'm not rich. If I was rich, I'd be handing money out all the time. And so I think when you are a creative person and you don't have, you know, money to just give away, you give what you can. You give with your heart, your talent, with your, you get your friends together and you put on a show, and you do it
That's
that way.
nothing more special than that. Make people laugh, and then for a good cause. And well, where can people go to find out more about you and where you're performing next?
Right now on my social media, it's Vickie Plummer Comedian, which is Vickie, because there's a billion ways to spell it. That's my Instagram, and that's where I put everything. And I have a link tree on there, so I list everything that I'm doing. And so the big show that's happening is tomorrow. But then I'm in New Jersey on Monday and Tuesday in South Amboy, and then I have a show coming up at Scotty's in New Jersey on February 3rd, and February 4th I'm doing a comedy contest in Suffolk, New York at Rhino.
I think that's not far where I live in Nanuet, so I live right down the road. So
Oh, good.
offline, let me know, and I think I might come.
All right. It's
I'll
all
have a rehearsal.
decided by the audience, so I guess they'll do it by
Fun.
applause and stuff. So we'll see how that goes. And then I'll be in Texas. I'm going to be a bridesmaid in one of my friend's weddings, and so I'll be at the Plano House of Comedy on February 15th. And I think
Nice.
that's all I have lined up right now, because COVID canceled a lot of stuff, and
It certainly
slowly
did.
getting a few things going back. So we'll see what happens.
Well, continued
Yeah.
success, Vickie. Thank you so much for joining us on Music Matters, and I hope tomorrow is a massive success. And
Thank you.
you keep putting great energy out there, and I think some great things are in store for you this year.
Thank you so much. I love your show. I've been watching them when I have time, and I've been having a great time. You have really good guests and a varied amount of guests. I love it. It's awesome.
I love to tell stories. I love to talk to people, and I'm always amazed by what I learn from my colleagues. And like you, this is so interesting to me to just have these kind of long form conversations and to dig in. And thank you so much for sharing yours today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
All the best. Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. Like and share our videos as it helps our community grow. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, keep music and the arts alive.